Chapter 648. Lin Yuan did not expect that when you had been sorting out the Zheng family's information for the past 2 days and had gone to the Radiant Light Palace to watch the all-star match. She had not been idle at all. She had actually used her spare time to nurture the elemental source-type source paper to Bronze 3/Elite. While when you turned into a piece of paper and flew away, Lin Yuan had used Morbius True Data to check the source paper's attributes. Fey name, source paper, paper flower, Fey species, elemental/sand, Fey grade, Bronze 3, Fey type, source, Fey quality, elite abilities, frowny face, paper dance, turn the body into flying pieces of paper. The paper is immune to physical damage, but the effect is doubled when facing elemental damage. The transformed paper has a flickering effect that triggers once every 5 seconds and can flash 3 kilometers in a general direction. Paper crane pact. Condenses paper into a paper crane. The paper crane can convey a specific message. The paper crane records the recipient's aura. If the person without the aura of the paper crane receives the paper crane will automatically burn. The paper crane has a flickering effect that is 10 times that of the paper dance. Exclusive skill, frowny face, heaven listening secret manual. The contractor's body turns into a secret manual. The secret manual raises the flying pieces of paper. As the secret manual flips, it can record all the subtle sensations on the flying pieces of paper. Lin Yuan was stunned when he saw the elemental source-type source paper that when you had nurtured. In terms of the combat effect of the elemental source-type source paper, Lin Yuan could only evaluate it as trash. It could be said that the elemental source-type source paper had almost no combat ability. The only skill that could be of use in battle was the normal skill, paper dance, which triggered the blink effect once every 5 seconds. It could have the effect of teleportation. As for the paper dance's ability to turn into paper and be immune to physical damage, Lin Yuan felt that it was a good self-protection ability. However, while the paper was immune to physical damage, it had to bear double the elemental effects. Such a restriction made this self-protection ability very useless. After all, every spirit chi professional could contract a few Feys, and most spirit chi professionals would have Feys that were good at using elemental damage. However, when Yu was a creation master, and the Feys she had contracted previously were not good at combat. Thus, the origin paper's insignificance in battle did not affect Wen Yu at all. If one looked at the Genesis paper not from a battle perspective but from an internal affairs perspective, then the Genesis paper that Wen Yu had nurtured would not be very useful. The origin paper was an irreplaceable treasure when it came to internal affairs. Previously, Listen had caught a silver messenger pigeon on the listening heron chamber of commerce's tree and obtained some information about the Zheng family. In his opinion, each of Wen Yu's elite ability, paper crane pact, was equivalent to a messenger pigeon. After all, the messenger pigeon was just a Fey. If a high-class creation master used a special method to trap it, the messenger pigeon might lose its vigilance. On the other hand, Wen Yu's skill, pact of paper cranes, did not need to worry about this at all. The paper crane agreement was under Wen Yu's control, so there was no risk of the secret being leaked. The pact of paper cranes had a flickering effect, and its effect was 10 times that of the previous paper dance. In other words, the paper crane could fly 30 kilometers every 5 seconds, and it could fly 360 kilometers in 1 minute. As the source paper grew stronger, the effects of the skill would also become stronger. At that time, the flickering effect of the pact of the paper crane would also become stronger. However, it seemed that the speed of the pact of the paper crane was already faster than most Feys. It was several times faster than the silver messenger pigeon. Wen Yu's pact of the paper crane could be used as a special communication method for Sky City to the outside world. It added a more mysterious veil to Sky City in the clouds. As for the exclusive skill Heaven Listening Secret Record, it allowed Wen Yu to become the most outstanding intelligence controller. Lin Yuan, who had lived 2 lives, knew that the devil was hidden in the details. The source paper's exclusive skill Heaven Listening Secret Record allowed Wen Yu to record without missing any details that could not be detected by the naked eye or that people could not help but overlook. If she had the support of a strong enough perception ability, Wen Yu alone was enough to support Sky City's intelligence network. Suddenly Lin Yuan thought of Gray, which was hatching in his spirit lock spatial zone. Gray, which had transformed into a heaven and earth Fey, could be said to be a pleasant surprise for Lin Yuan. It had a perfect concealment effect for the floating island whale that was about to hatch. It blocked the detection and perception from the outside world. This was Gray's common skill, cloud transformation. As Gray's strength increased, it spread out across the horizon, overlooking everything in the mortal world. It would be great if when used perception could connect with Gray's ability, cloud transformation. That way when you used the source paper's exclusive skill Heaven Listening Secret Record, she could record the world shrouded by cloud transformation. She could perfectly collect the world's resources and intelligence. After thinking for a while, Lin Yuan slapped his forehead. He felt that his imagination was too wild. When Hu Quan came out of his room, he saw Lin Yuan slapping his forehead at the door of his room. He felt that Lin Yuan was not very smart. Hu Quan walked forward and said, "Is it very comfortable to slap your forehead? Do you want me to make a mechanical arm for you that can slap your forehead 100 times per second and experience 100 times the pleasure?" Lin Yuan, who was about to enter his room, revealed a handsome and puzzled expression. What was wrong with this craftsman? How could he say such a strange thing? However, if the mechanical arm that could slap 100 times per second was sold on the market, it seemed to be very popular. The sun was setting in the west, and the red glow of the sky only occupied a corner of the western horizon under the invasion of the night. It was like a weak flame lingering in the sky, unwilling to dissipate. For people, 2 men and 2 women, were panting heavily on the peak of a mountain on the outskirts of the royal capital, sweating profusely. It was obvious that the 4 of them had just climbed this steep mountain and exhausted all their strength. Zhang Xiaobai lay on the ground and shouted loudly, "Fuck the Extreme Guild Club. I Zhang Xiaobai want to live again." Zhang Xiaobai's shout was filled with joy after sweating profusely, as though everything about the Extreme Guild Club had been relieved after this shout. Zhang Xiaobai, who was shouting at the sky, did not notice that Xen Ying, who was sitting beside him, was looking at him with eyes full of love. Zhang Xiaobai felt that it was not enough after shouting, so he shouted again. My rebirth failed. Xen Ying, that bitch is pestering me. Sob, sob, sob. Before Zhang Xiaobai could finish shouting, his beloved palm immediately used indestructible grasp and used a phase rush with a fatal rhythm. The second was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 649. A series of shrill screams seemed to frighten the red clouds on the horizon, and they disappeared into the darkness in an instant. At this point the sky slowly darkened. Zhang Xiaobai rubbed his stomach, looking aggrieved like a little wife being bullied. Xen Ying, on the other hand, had a cold expression and no longer looked at Zhang Xiaobai. Lu Pinru and Tan Ran were already used to this. It was as if the 4 of them had experienced this many times a day. It was as if he was already used to it. Lu Pinru said, "Let's go down the mountain and have a good meal. We can talk about our thoughts about the future." As Lu Pinru spoke, she looked at the lights at the foot of the mountain. Her eyes flickered. It was obvious that Lu Pinru was not as calm as she looked on the surface. Zhang Xiaobai was disappointed in the Extreme Guild Club's inaction after the incident and their attitude towards Xen Ying, Tan Ran and Lu Pinru. Lu Pinru had already given up on the Extreme Guild Club when she had been instructed to use her body to block a skill that would damage the soul. Lu Pinru had discovered the problem with the Extreme Guild Club a long time ago. She didn't want to stay in such a completely commercial guild club. At that time, Zhang Xiaobai, Xen Ying and Tan Ran were all working hard for the S tournament. Lu Pinru also wanted to stand on the arena with these 3 companions who had supported her all the way. Therefore, Lu Pinru had been suppressing her grudge against the Extreme Guild Club. Now that she knew what the Extreme Guild Club had done, Lu Pinru was the calmest. Lu Pinru's fluctuating emotions were completely filled with gratitude for Lin Yuan and the remembrance of her past self, who had dedicated all her youth to the Extreme Guild Club. Hearing Lu Pinru say that they want to talk about their future thoughts, Zhang Xiaobai hurriedly said, "I told you before that Lin Yuan has also established a guild club and wants to pull the 4 of us over. I have already agreed to go over to Lin Yuan. What do you guys think?" Upon hearing Zhang Xiaobai's question, Xen Ying rolled her eyes at him. "What do you mean?" Zhang Xiaobai was stunned by Xen Ying's question. He was a little confused. Then Zhang Xiaobai heard Xen Ying say, "Do you still want to abandon me? The Extreme Guild Club's procedures have been completed. I'll go to the Extreme Guild Club tomorrow to confirm the contents of the contract. I'll be free after 3 days." Tan Ran also sat up from the ground and said seriously, I also want to join Lin Yuan's guild club, but I am no longer as young as before. Tan Ran's words silenced Zhang Xiaobai and Exin Ying. Yes, Tan Ran, the youngest among them, was already 24 years old after the new year. He was no longer the youth he used to be. Zhang Xiaobai turned his head to look at the lights at the foot of the mountain and suddenly hesitated. At this moment, a calm and determined female voice rang out. Why are you guys so depressed all of a sudden? Isn't our dream on the field? Let's just treat it as if the past dozen or so years have started all over again and will live again. Zhang Xiaobai, Exin Ying and Tan Ran digested Lu Pinru's words. At this moment Lu Pinru started humming out of tune. The answer to dreams has always been in your own hands. Only you can give yourself strength. After singing one line, Lu Pinru continued. Do you still remember this song by the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess? Lin Yuan put the answer to our dreams in our hands. Can't we catch it? Even if we're not strong enough and can't be members of the reserve team. It's also good to be a staff member in Lin Yuan's guild club. I can't repay what I owe Lin Yuan in this lifetime. For the rest of my life I'll be doing odd jobs in Lin Yuan's guild club. Lu Pinru was usually very quiet and rarely spoke. However, Lu Pinru's words had a kind of infinite power that dispelled the confusion for the three of them and pointed out the direction ahead. Zhang Xiaobai, who had found the direction, once again revealed a frivolous smile on his face as he grinned. Let's go to the arsenal to eat in a while. I found a super good store. When Exin Ying heard Zhang Xiaobai's words, she felt her fists itch again. Tan Ran did not understand what Zhang Xiaobai meant by the arsenal and thought she had heard wrong, so she asked, Brother Xiaobai, what kind of place is the arsenal? Brother Bai, what kind of place is the armory? Can we still eat there? Zhang Xiaobai winked and said with a grin, Guns, bullets, cannons, everything. Guns, bullets, cannons, everything. There are even cow species phase and goat species phase. It's so beautiful. Let me tell you, every time I eat there, Exin Ying. Before Zhang Xiaobai could finish his words, he was punched by Exin Ying again. Tan Ran still didn't understand and was about to ask again when Lu Pinru covered his ears. Lu Pinru hurriedly said. It's rare for a new buffet restaurant to open in the capital. It's said that the food is quite delicious. I wonder if it will close down like the other buffet restaurants. We have to seize the opportunity and quickly go and eat to our heart's content. After laughing and fooling around for a while, the four of them looked at the lights of the thousands of households at the foot of the mountain. The four of them felt an indescribable sense of carefreeness when they regained their original intentions. Suddenly, the four of them fell into a state of enlightenment. When Zhang Xiaobai opened his eyes, he found that the other three were staring at him. Zhang Xiaobai coughed lightly, stood up and said arrogantly. I just accidentally comprehended a willpower rune. With that said, Zhang Xiaobai urged his mental strength and a rune with the will of hope shot out of Zhang Xiaobai's mind. After Zhang Xiaobai finished showing off, he saw the three of them looking at him like they were looking at a fool. Immediately after, Exin Ying, Tan Ran and Lu Pinru circulated their mental strength, and 3 willpower runes appeared at the same time and floated together with Zhang Xiaobai's willpower rune. At this moment the 4 of them were dumbfounded. They looked at each other and felt that it was a little unbelievable. This was because the 4 willpower runes all carried almost the same flavor of hope. Immediately after, the 4 of them held hands and jumped on the top of the mountain, cheering loudly and full of carefreeness. They raised their joined hands as if they could touch the sky. Zhang Xiaobai and the others arrived at the entrance of the Muxiang residence in the Fei carriage and were about to go in. Suddenly, a violent sound came from inside the Muxiang residence. A large number of water elements suddenly emerged in the Muxiang residence. As the water elements surged, a figure flew out along with the door and fell heavily to the ground. Immediately after, a delicate shout came from inside. Su, do you think you are a pig trotter or pig shoulder? How can this lady like you? Seeing the situation in front of them, Zhang Xiaobai, Exin Ying, Tan Ran, and Lu Pinru swallowed sluggishly. What is going on? Could it be that the Radiance 100 sequence number 8 Thunder Feast Su confessed to the Radiance 100 sequence number 21 Zhao Xiaochun? This was a huge piece of news. Third, end of this chapter. Chapter 650. On an island covered with gems that shone brightly all day long, There were originally 8 towers of different postures standing on the ground covered with gems of various colors. 7 of the towers had 32 chanters kneeling on the ground chanting softly. Every 32 chanters was led by a chanter. Their left hands were flipping through the secret tome inscribed with the patterns of their respective towers, while their right hands were waving in an intoxicated manner. However, under one of the towers, the 32 chanters and the chanter who were supposed to be kneeling on the ground had all stopped chanting and stood up. At this time, the tower had already risen from the ground and was suspended in mid-air. Inside the tower there was a huge throne inlaid with all kinds of strange bones, and on top of it was a huge weird ball of flesh. Not far below the throne, a short-haired woman with hollow eyes was slowly shaking her head. The earring on the short-haired girl's left ear made a crisp sound as it swayed. The earring on the woman's left ear was very special. There were 3 colored crystals the size of a fingernail on it. Each of the 3 crystals had a mystical and extraordinary exotic beast swimming within them. Each of them contained a strong scent of the laws. Moreover, the rules of the strange beasts in each crystal were so strong that it was as if a single rule alone was enough to open up a world. However, these 3 worlds that were originally opened up by rules were imprisoned in this colored crystal that was only the size of a fingernail. Suddenly, a crisp voice came from the huge weird ball of flesh on the throne of bones. Sister third page, why are you standing there and stroking your hair coquettishly? You look like an unaddressed love letter. So disgusting. Also, your expression is like a lost good that couldn't be sold in the last century and is now in the hands of this century. The purest voice uttered the harshest words, as if it was narrating an unchanging truth since time immemorial. Even if the short-haired woman with hollow eyes was extremely beautiful, it was as if she had become an ugly person who didn't dare to look in the mirror. Hearing this, the short-haired woman's hollow eyes suddenly flashed with a wicked light. Ye 5th page of truth, you're leaving the Holy Land to go to the path of awesomeness. I'm kind enough to send you off, but you actually dare to say that I'm ugly. Aren't you afraid that I'll tear apart your rotten flesh and destroy the paradise inside? As soon as 3-page Eternal Sin's voice fell, a crack appeared on the huge, strange flesh on the skeleton throne. A boy with an unusually delicate appearance like a porcelain doll walked out from inside. Looking behind the little boy and into the huge flesh crack, it turned out to be a childlike amusement park. He could vaguely see the duckling toy inside and the half-eaten strawberry cake on the table. Don't worry, Sister third page. It's cruel to look at ugly people too closely. I'm not looking at you anymore. Hearing the words of the 5th page truth, the expressions on the faces of the 3rd page Eternal Sin disappeared. His eyes returned to their previous state of being empty holes. After a long while, 3rd page Eternal Sin said, Big Sister wanted to tell you something this time, but it seems like you don't need to know anymore. Upon hearing this, the 5th page truth said indifferently, You should worry about yourself. The totem moon that originally shone on the Darkstone continent emitted the moonlight of the abbot and sublimated the Darkstone continent by half. It destroyed almost all of 7th page War's arrangements on the Darkstone path. How much do you think this has to do with Qing Wu, who you recommended to Sister 7th page Truth? Sister 3rd page Truth is really a bad woman. Upon hearing that, 3-page Eternal Sin suddenly dodged and gently tapped the 5th page Truth's forehead with his finger. The 5th page Truth was startled by 3-page Eternal Sin's action, and then his expression became dignified. At that moment, 3-page Eternal Sin giggled again. The Radiance Federation's Moon Empress has reached that level. 7th page War needs to be afraid, but I don't. The 5th page Truth took a deep breath. His attitude toward 3-page Eternal Sin was no longer as unscrupulous as before. It turns out that in addition to Big Brother 1st page and Big Sister 2nd page, Big Sister 3rd page has also reached that level. Congratulations. The 5th page Truth was still in control of his innocent voice, saying words that were as convincing as the truth. However, his tone did not have the slightest hint of sincere congratulations. 3-page Eternal Sin turned and walked out of the tower. When he walked to the door, he shook the earring on his left ear and made a final sound. This time, you have moved the Tower of Truth to the Deep Brahman Federation on the shockwave path. Be careful. After saying that, 3-page Eternal Sin jumped down and sat on the ground covered with gems under the tower. Upon hearing 3-page Eternal Sin's words, the 5th page Truth raised his hand, and an ordinary bone scepter appeared in his hand. He did not take 3-page Eternal Sin's words to heart at all. The 5th-page truth rubbed the bone scepter in his hand and pouted. Deep Brahman is just a seed that I sowed in the early years. Now this seed has sprouted. It's time for me to grab the sprout that grew in Deep Brahman and pull out the entire soil. As the 5th-page truth's voice fell, the Tower of Truth, which was already floating, cut through the space with the momentum of breaking through the air. Standing on the ground, 3-page Eternal Sin murmured softly as he looked in the direction of the Tower of Truth's departure. Strange, the 5th-page Truth's sacred source lifeform is special and can be said to be the most feared existence in this world. Everything in the world is guilty. But why does my sacred source lifeform, the punishment mirror, predict that the sin on the 5th-page Truth's body will suddenly dissipate after a period of time? Strange. Really strange. With Huquan's help, Lin Yuan had fished out the 5 fortune ranchu that Duan he needed from the red sandalwood longevity fish tank with the exclusive skill primordial spirit transformation. Lin Yuan found that this spirit siphon goldfish had reached bronze 4/flawless. Duan he was not in a hurry to contract a new fey. Just the meat of the pinnacle suzerain/myth 2 crow of calamity and dream-eating bat would keep Duan he busy for a period of time. However, Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. Each head of the 6-headed sea demon snake had an independent personality. Generally, the main head, which contained the most elemental energy, controlled the thoughts. However, with the crow of calamity and dream-eating bat's meat, the main head that controlled the 6-headed sea demon snake's thoughts would undoubtedly change owners to the smallest and most pitiful dark-type head. The dark-type head's personality would control the body. The 6-headed sea demon snake's soul did not change, and its feelings for Duan he did not change either. However, each personality was also relatively independent and a completely different existence. In that case, wouldn't Duan he have 6 wives with the 6-headed sea demon snake, purple demon? Moreover, as the 6-headed sea demon snake's strength grew, Duan he might have a 7th, 8th, or even 9th wife. Duan he was simply a scumbag who spoke righteously and had evidence to prove that he was a scumbag. From today onward he would resume his 3-night watch. This was the first watch. End of this chapter. Chapter 651. After returning to his room, he entered the spirit lock spatial zone and saw Genius and Chimey helping him sort out the elemental pearls produced by the elemental shellfish. The elemental pearls were classified according to their attributes and purity. Even the 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls were separated by Genius and Chimey according to the pearl rhythm. Even though the wind speed rapid antelope knew that Lin Yuan had entered, it didn't immediately get close to him. Instead, he was staring at the sea burial lotus flower as if he was staring at a thief. It was as if he would kill the sea burial lotus flower the moment it moved. The wind speed rapid antelope could control the violent winds to attack the bone lotus flowers that the sea burial lotus flower had produced. Genius scuttled to Lin Yuan's feet and skillfully climbed onto Lin Yuan's shoulder in a few moves. It then spoke in a childish voice. Lin Yuan, the sea burial lotus flower always steals the coral jade that you set up when Big Brother Goat is resting. When Big Brother Goat was resting, the sea burial lotus flower used the bone lotus flower to grab a few pieces of coral jade into the water. The sound of the water startled Big Brother Goat. Big Brother Goat has been staring at the sea burial lotus flower ever since he woke up. He hasn't left it at all. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan walked to the wind speed rapid antelope's side and rubbed its small head. You've already done very well. After speaking, he took another wind elemental pearl and crushed it before feeding it to the wind speed rapid antelope. He had previously asked the wind speed rapid antelope to help him manage the spirit lock spatial zone, but he hadn't expected it to have such a strong sense of responsibility. Just because of a few pieces of coral jade, he was competing with the sea burial lotus flower. However, Lin Yuan was very appreciative of the wind speed rapid antelope's actions. The wind speed rapid antelope was competing with the sea burial lotus flower because it clearly felt that it had failed to complete its mission. He had to take good care of the spirit lock spatial zone. After pacifying the wind speed rapid antelope, he grabbed the sea burial lotus flower out of the spirit pool. He found that the sea burial lotus flower's strength had increased too quickly in the spirit lock spatial zone. Right now, the sea burial lotus flower had already reached elite rank 4. A small piece of sobbing sea crystal that could be seen with the naked eye had already precipitated out from the roots. However, he was a little puzzled as to why the sea burial lotus flower would not absorb the spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone. Why would he covet those coral jades that hadn't completely grown insect patterns? Could it be that these coral jades, which only had a few insect patterns, were more attractive to the sea burial lotus flower than the pure and massive spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone? The carcinoma fae, the sea burial lotus flower, was a fae that didn't have high intelligence. It would instinctively choose the most beneficial evolution and survival method. From the looks of it, the coral jades in the spirit lock spatial zone were extremely useful to the sea burial lotus flower. According to the current growth rate of the insect patterns, he found that the time for a batch of coral jade to fully grow the insect patterns was equivalent to the time for the wood to completely jade textured. Back then, Lin Yuan had promised Gao Feng that he would provide 150 caddies of coral jade every 10 days. The quantity that he had provided Gao Feng was only about 2/5 of the coral jade that Lin Yuan needed to nurture. He was also planning to use 1/5 of the coral jade to nurture the supreme-grade angelfish of bliss that he had obtained from Gao Feng and the female angelfish of bliss that was about to give birth. Therefore, every time Lin Yuan nurtured the coral jade, he would still have 2/5 of the total left. Lin Yuan had originally planned to let Hu Quan make the remaining coral jades into luxury goods and sell them. However, the sea burial lotus flower had a need for the coral jade with insect patterns. Lin Yuan thought that he might as well feed the remaining 2/5 of the coral jade with insect patterns to the sea burial lotus flower and let it absorb it. Although the sea burial lotus flower had absorbed a few pieces of the coral jade with insect patterns and didn't have any changes, there was still a chance for the tumor fae to mutate and evolve. There had never been any precedent of the sea burial lotus flower evolving or mutating in the natural world. However, the coral jade with insect patterns was something that couldn't be nurtured in the natural world, even in the deep sea. Furthermore, the carcinoma fae, sea burial lotus flower, had only appeared once in the records. Just that one appearance had caused tens of thousands of square kilometers of barren land in the deep sea. Lin Yuan silently calculated in his heart. If he constantly fed the coral jade with insect patterns to the sea burial lotus flower, would the sea burial lotus flower have a chance to evolve and mutate? The more he thought about it, the brighter Lin Yuan's heart became. According to what his master, the Moon Empress, had said, some of the tumor phase would be able to evolve and mutate and would be able to form a contract with them. If the sea burial lotus flower could evolve and mutate, and the evolved sea burial lotus flower would be useful to Lin Yuan could form a contract with the sea burial lotus flower. After all, the fruits on the cinnabar Osmanthus haworthia would mature after a period of time. After eating it, Lin Yuan wouldn't need to rely on Morbius spirit lock ability and could truly form a contract with a fae. The sea burial lotus flower was a plant-type fae, and it was within the range of what Lin Yuan could form a contract with. Previously, when Lin Yuan had formed a contract with Genius and Chimey, they had been so weak that they couldn't even be considered faes. Otherwise, Lin Yuan wouldn't have fainted on the spot after forming a contract with Genius and Chimey with his pitiful spiritual energy. After waking up, he would have had a headache for half a month. Instead, he would have been sent to heaven. Lin Yuan might have decided to feed the coral jade with insect patterns to the sea burial lotus flower, but secretly eating it wasn't a good habit. Therefore, Lin Yuan did the same thing as when he had just obtained the sea burial lotus flower and trained it. This training session took a full 2 hours. After 2 hours, the sea burial lotus flower was abnormally obedient. Every time it saw Lin Yuan reach out, it would involuntarily raise a small white flower. She wrapped Lin Yuan's finger with the flower. Lin Yuan poured the spirit siphon goldfish that Duan he needed into the spirit pool and let the spirit siphon goldfish, which had the exclusive skill of spirit primordial conversion, be raised in the spirit pool first. Then he took the brocade pouch that Duan he had just given him. He carefully poured the law crystal fragments from the brocade pouch onto the workbench. At the same time, he summoned the sacred sword-wielding queen. Unexpectedly, after the sacred sword-hugging queen was summoned, she did not even look at the law crystal fragments on the table. Instead, he said while drooling, "Master, let me eat that bag of laws of nature origin crystals first, okay?" Lin Yuan was delighted to hear that. Looks like my contracted sacred source life form is pretty picky. However, it seemed that the picky princess was quite easy to take care of. After all, compared to the law crystals of suzerain/myth breed phase, the law origin crystals produced in the bodies of Class 7-dimensional lifeforms were undoubtedly much easier to obtain. Naturally, Lin Yuan would not reject his contracted sacred source lifeform's request. He took out the other brocade pouch that Duan He had given him and poured the law origin crystals from the brocade pouch onto the workbench as well. There would be one more in a while. End of this chapter. Chapter 652. Lin Yuan counted carefully and found that there were a total of 21 law origin crystals on the workbench. These 21 law origin crystals were proof of Duan He's current strength, or perhaps even earlier. He had killed at least 21 level 7-dimensional creatures with strength equivalent to the suzerain/mythi realm. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh at Duan He's or the six-headed sea demon snake's strength in the same grade. Lin Yuan said to the princess, whose eyes were shining as she looked at the law origin crystals, "Absorb these law origin crystals first. You should absorb these law origin crystals first so that I can investigate the types of law crystal fragments." The sacred sword-hugging princess received Lin Yuan's permission and happily picked up the turbid law origin crystals. One by one, she embedded the law origin crystals into the crown on her forehead. When he saw the princess embedding the law origin crystals into the crown, Lin Yuan could not help but think of how Zhao Xiaochun ate. This was simply too similar. Lin Yuan was about to say that the 21 turbid law origin crystals embedded in the princess crown looked a little ugly. But then the 21 turbid law origin crystals embedded in the crown shone like stars. Each law origin crystal scattered a starry rain, and the starlight fell on the princess' fluffy and wide dress. Upon seeing the princess absorbing the law origin crystals, Lin Yuan turned his head and began to examine the pile of law crystal fragments on the table in front of him. When Duan He had poured the law crystal fragments into his hand, Lin Yuan had felt that there were a lot of them. However, after using Morbius True Data to check, Lin Yuan realized that this handful of law crystal fragments had only come from 5 suzerain/mythi phase. It was just that a complete law crystal would shatter into many fragments. There were gaps in the fragments, and when mixed together, these fragments appeared to be much more than 5 complete law crystals. Lin Yuan carefully picked out these law crystal fragments. After he was done, Lin Yuan muttered softly, "Did Duan He destroy the horned gray whale family?" Lin Yuan found that 3 of the 5 suzerain/mythi phase that had contributed law crystal fragments came from the horned gray whales. Lin Yuan finally understood why Duan He's 6-headed sea demon snake's water-type main head was more than twice the size of the heads of the other attributes. It was probably because it had eaten the meat of these 3 suzerain/mythi water-type horned gray whales. The laws comprehended by these 3 horned gray whales were very similar, but their tastes were also slightly different. The wave law, cut law and vortex law. These 3 laws were the laws that extended from the water element's attack direction and were considered 3 very ordinary laws. However, he felt that these 3 laws were exceptionally suitable for the function of the princess' sacred sword form. The sacred sword's blade was unleashed. The sacred sword queen's sacred sword queen's sword form was light sword queen's sword form. Sword queen's sacred sword queen's sword form. Another pile of gilded flame dragon lice came from a fire attribute Fae and comprehended the scorching flame law. If the sacred sword-hugging queen absorbed these 5 piles of law crystal fragments, the sacred sword-hugging queen wouldn't be able to absorb them. Sword crystals, sword divine of law, sacred crystals, sword to each of the sacred of law of crystals. However, in addition to the 3 complete law crystals that the princess's silk coon had absorbed previously, the princess's silk coon now contained 8 types of laws that originated from the 5 elements of light, darkness, ice, water, fire and light. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly heard the rustling of leaves and 2 strange chirps. One of the chirps sounded unfamiliar to Lin Yuan, but he couldn't tell what it was. However, he could clearly hear that the other chirp was a crow's chirp. Lin Yuan turned his head and was stunned by the sacred sword-wielding queen's transformation. The 21 turbid law origin crystals that were originally embedded on the crown of the princess had shrunk to the size of a tiny diamond. Looking at these broken diamonds, he could feel the pure rule force contained in them. He knew that the sacred sword-hugging queen had purified that trace of pure power of law in the law origin crystal. Originally, the queen's skirt had been formed from the ice flame law, Dark Death Law and Dead Dream Law. Now they had taken the form of the frigid snow pine, the dark night calamity crow and the dream-eating bat. At this moment the illusory figure came to life. The dark night calamity crow and the dream-eating bat represented darkness and hovered high in the sky. The cold snow pine was like a snowy mountain that was infinitely tall and pierced the sky. As for the willpower from the dark-eyed scorpion tiger and the dark spirit-eye tadpole, it didn't increase in the slightest after the princess had absorbed the law origin crystals. Instead, after the aura of the law increased, the aura of the willpower both became dormant. They only decorated the inconspicuous parts of the skirt. At that moment, the two auras of the law that hovered in the sky suddenly bloomed on the princess's skirt. The auras of the dark night calamity crow and the dream-eating bat kept increasing, and the power of law contained within them instantly became several times stronger. The dark night calamity crow and the dream-eating bat also became more agile due to the increase in the aura of law. Lin Yuan sensed the dark night calamity crow and the dream-eating bat formed by Dead Dream's law rune. He found that the power of law contained within them was already comparable to Suzerain/Myth 3 Endless Summer's Enlightenment Law. Obviously, with the nourishment of these 21 law origin crystals, Dead Night and Dead Dream's laws, which were originally on the verge of breaking through, had both broken through. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. The goal that the Dark Night Calamity Raven and the Dream-Eating Bat had been fighting for all this time had actually been achieved by him in such a way. At this moment, the Sacred Sword Queen opened her eyes and stretched her body in satisfaction. He said to Lin Yuan, "Master, Dark Death's Law and Dead Dream's Law have reached the Myth 3 phase control law intensity. In the future, when using the Holy Sword function, even if the owner uses the blade of the Holy Sword to strike out the Death of Night and Dead Dream laws, the Death of Night and Dead Dream laws won't dissipate. Instead, it can be nourished by the princess's dress and slowly recover its energy." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. He could not bear to consume one law every time he struck with the sacred sword's blade. After all, law crystals were simply too hard to obtain. Lin Yuan asked, "Since the Dark Night Calamity Raven and the Dream-Eating Bat's comprehended laws won't dissipate when they reach the Myth 3 level, then the cold snow pine's ice flame rune won't dissipate when it reaches the Myth 3 level, right?" The holy sword-wielding princess nodded and pointed at her princess robe. "The Sacred Sword Queen's dress has absorbed a complete law. When it reaches the Myth 3 level, it will form a complete totem on the dress. Only the law that forms the totem won't dissipate." Lin Yuan looked in the direction of the Sacred Sword Queen's finger, and found that there was indeed a crow and bat totem embroidered on the dress with plain silk thread. Chapter 3. End of this chapter. Chapter 653. Lin Yuan thought that this change might be related to Suzerain Phase being able to martial body transformation at Myth 3. It was just that the body that had been turned into a weapon had now lost its physical body. Thus, it could only form a totem on the princess' skirt. Lin Yuan pointed at the pile of law crystal fragments and said, "Absorb these too. You should absorb these too." The more law crystals that contained pure power of the law, the better for Lin Yuan. Even if only the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer could use them now. Who knew if the others in the mansion or even he himself would be able to use them one day. To the princess there was nothing more joyous than having a meal. As the skirt spun, the 5 piles of law crystal fragments were shaken by the skirt and scattered toward the crown on the princess' head. Immediately after, Lin Yuan noticed that the princess' skirt underwent another drastic change. Under the influence of the 3 piles of horned gray whale law crystal fragments, the skirt turned into layers of waves. In the blink of an eye, the waves turned into a boundless sea. A ferocious insect covered in orange flames was lying on the cold snow pine that was as tall as a snowy peak. The ferocious insect shook its wings and emitted bursts of dragon might. However, it seemed to be very afraid of the dark plague crows and dream-eating bats in the sky and did not dare to rise into the sky. It only dared to lie on the cold snow pine's branches. The orange flames on its body fused with the cold snow pine's ice flames and became very beautiful. 3 shadows suddenly appeared in the ocean formed by the skirt. The 3 shadows grew bigger, and then the huge whale with 3 long horns emerged from the sea. It then smashed into the sea, creating turbulent waves. The huge whale with long horns appeared for a long time, but the waves on the sea had not calmed down. It was as if there were countless undercurrents and whirlpools. At that moment, a faint light appeared in the deep sea as if it was guiding people into the deep sea. Lin Yuan felt that the Sacred Sword Queen's sacred source life form was strong. It was just the grand world formed by the princesses Luo Kun absorbing the laws within the various law crystals. It gave Lin Yuan a kind of indescribable feeling. It was unknown how many gigantic creatures were contained in the waves formed by the bottom of the skirt. It forcefully bore all the unknown, deep and undetectable. It was as if layers upon layers of mysteries were gathered under each wave. Suddenly he entered a state of epiphany. The willpower rune related to inclusiveness and vastness, which he had comprehended outside Indigo Azure City at the coastal front sea, condensed in his mind. The vastness of the sea converged from all directions, gathering water from all directions. Lin Yuan did not expect that the 2 willpower runes that he had comprehended would be so powerful. He didn't comprehend the willpower rune that was suitable for genius. Instead, he comprehended the willpower rune that was suitable for Blackie. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to enhance Blackie into a fantasy breed. Anyway, he could feel that he could comprehend the knowledge willpower rune in his mind that was suitable for genius in these 2 days. At that time he could strengthen Genius and Little Black together and evolve them into fantasy breeds. When the queen finished absorbing the 5 piles of law crystals, Lin Yuan realized that her star class had not advanced from 1 star to 2 star. Looks like I still have a long way to go before I can become a sacred source life form, sacred sword-wielding princess. He did not know when princess would be able to advance to 4 stars and enter the growth stage to unlock new functions. Tomorrow was the opening day of the private territory. Thus, Lin Yuan carried Genius and Chimey to rest early in the morning. However, for one person in the manor, he experienced a qualitative transformation that night. The flying paper fragments condensed into Wen Yu's figure in the Hidden Moon Pavilion. Wen Yu, who had just condensed her figure, panted heavily and sighed. Using the source paper to use the paper dance skill to travel really consumes too much spirit chi. It seems like before becoming a B-rank spirit chi professional, it is more convenient to ride the Sunlight Egret when coming to the Hidden Moon Pavilion. Wen Yu rummaged through the Hidden Moon Pavilion's bookshelves and found the information of the Miao family and the Miao family's experts. Wen Yu arranged the information and the Miao family's experts on the table. Then Wen Yu said softly, "Source paper, use the exclusive skill Heaven Listening Mystic Technique." As Wen Yu's voice echoed, she turned into a huge ancient book. The ancient book flipped and fluttered in the air, causing the paper to dance. As the paper danced, it created a breeze that flipped the Miao family's information and the Miao family's experts on the table. In just a moment, the pile of ancient books and the Miao family's experts on the table was blown to the last page by the breeze. Then Wen Yu, who had turned into an ancient book, returned to her figure and put her hands on the table. She was obviously very tired. The overdraft of spiritual power made Wen Yu hurriedly sit on the chair, take out the spirit fluid that she had concocted from the Fey storage box and drink it. The paper that was originally fluttering fell in an orderly manner beside Wen Yu's hand. The stack of paper was even taller than the Hidden Moon Pavilion's information and the Miao family's experts. Wen Yu thought to herself, the source paper's exclusive skill, Heaven Listening Mystic Technique, consumes more spirit chi than the paper dance skill. However, it is really convenient to organize information and gather intelligence. A smile hung on Wen Yu's pale face due to the overdraft of spiritual power. She was finally becoming more and more useful to Lin Yuan and Sky City. Wen Yu did not know that behind the rows of bookshelves in the Hidden Moon Pavilion, there was a man in a silver robe. The man with a clear and bright look on his face looked at her. When Mystic Moon looked at Wen Yu, especially the source-type source paper that she had contracted, she knew that Lin Yuan valued her very much. In the beginning, as a spirit attendant, Wen Yu was an existence that Mystic Moon would not even look at. After Lin Yuan had named Wen Yu as his assistant, Mystic Moon realized that this girl, who she usually did not look at, was also improving at a speed beyond her understanding. She was also improving at a speed that was beyond her understanding. Mystic Moon still remembered that after being selected as Lin Yuan's assistant, Wen Yu felt that she was not strong enough and insisted on meeting the Moon Empress. She was just a person that Mystic Moon could not see any good points. However, when the Moon Empress asked Mystic Moon to bring Wenyu, Mystic Moon discovered that Wenyu had never shown her wisdom that was far beyond ordinary people. Looking at the current Wenyu, Mystic Moon's original thoughts were stirred again. At that moment, Wenyu heard a clear laughter coming from beside her. Wenyu looked up and found Mystic Moon looking at her. Wenyu hurriedly stood up and greeted. "Greetings, Lady Mystic Moon." When greeting Mystic Moon, Wenyu was still somewhat perturbed. As the chief supervisor of the Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon was usually in charge of everything in the Radiant Moon Palace for the Moon Empress. Although Wenyu had come into contact with Mystic Moon many times through Lin Yuan, whenever she faced Mystic Moon alone, Wenyu still could not help but feel a little nervous. At that moment Wenyu was very puzzled. Lady Mystic Moon was usually so busy, but now that she was standing in front of her, it was obvious that she had something to talk to her about. She did not know what it was about. First, even more. Begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Meow meow meow. End of this chapter. Chapter 654. Wenyu bowed and said when she saw that Xianyu did not speak for a long time. "Lady Black Moon, I've already finished looking up all the information I need to in the Hidden Moon Pavilion. I didn't notice that Lady Mystic Moon was in the Hidden Moon Pavilion before I came in, so I disturbed Lady Mystic Moon. I hope Lady Mystic Moon can forgive me." Xianyu looked at Wenyu and did not reply immediately. Instead, he casually flipped through the information about the Miao family and the biographies of the experts of the Miao family. His Highness had a conflict with the Miao family? When Wenyu heard this, she looked at Xianyu with a respectful expression, but she didn't reply. In her heart, she was now Lin Yuan's woman. If Mystic Moon asked about Lin Yuan and the Sky City, Lin Yuan could casually tell her about it. However, without Lin Yuan's permission, she felt that she should not reveal the news about Lin Yuan and Sky City to anyone. Seeing this, Xianyu let out a bright laugh. He looked at Wenyu with increasing satisfaction. During the New Year's banquet, Mystic Moon had looked at the Moon Empress and Lin Yuan, as though Cold Moon and Chu Xi were deeply in love with each other. He couldn't help but want to take him as his disciple. However, when the thought of accepting a disciple surfaced in her mind, she realized that the only person who appeared in her mind was Wenyu, who had guided her several times before. Mystic Moon was usually in charge of the Radiant Moon Palace's external affairs, so she was very busy. Thus, Xianyu had never paid much attention to the younger generation. The thought of accepting her as a disciple made Xianyu realize that the only person she could choose and was interested in was Wenyu. In a few days, Xianyu was going to leave for the outer realm and coincidentally bumped into Wenyu. Xianyu felt that it was better to make it even more coincidental. Xianyu had never valued a person's talent. In Mystic Moon's opinion, as long as one could comprehend a willpower rune, everything else could be achieved with resources. Even if the affinity with phase was unorthodox, if there was a top-notch creation master to tailor-make it, it would be much easier. Even the choice of phase would still be limited. In the end, there wasn't much difference between them and those who had a wide range of phase. After all, a person could only contract a limited number of phase. Compared to talent, Xianyu valued Wenyu's intelligence more. She had also displayed her loyalty to Lin Yuan. As one of the two Moon Envoys, no one knew better than Xianyu how much the Moon Empress valued Lin Yuan. Even Songyu, who was also one of the two Moon Envoys, was not as clear as Xianyu because she had been accompanying Chu Xi in Redbud City for the past few months. In Mystic Moon's heart, she had long acknowledged Lin Yuan as young lord and treated him as her junior. Wenyu was now playing the same role beside Lin Yuan as Mystic Moon played beside the Moon Empress. Compared to accepting a disciple, Mystic Moon was more willing to pour an effort to nurture a loyal and capable chief butler for Lin Yuan. Just as Wenyu was about to say something, she saw Xianyu smile brightly. "Wenyu, how about becoming my disciple?" Xianyu's words exploded in Wenyu's ears like a clap of thunder. It could be said that Wenyu respected Xianyu very much. If not for Xianyu's guidance, even if Wenyu's intelligence was astonishing, she would not have been able to understand it so quickly. During this time he had been proving his value to Lin Yuan. Although Wenyu had received guidance from Xianyu, she had never dared to think that one day Xianyu would become her master. However, Wenyu, who had grown up in an environment where the Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendants competed with each other, maintained her original heart despite having good intentions. She did not let her heart be clouded by the competition. However, after so many years of competition, Wen Yu understood that opportunities were always given to those who were prepared. Furthermore, there were some opportunities that could be lost in the blink of an eye, like the sand between one's fingers. After that, even if he wanted to hold it again, he wouldn't be able to. Wen Yu said hurriedly, "Lord Mystic Moon, I am willing to be your disciple." Hearing this, Xian Yu's usually clear and bright eyes became gentle as she said in a warm voice, "Since you are willing, why are you still calling me Lord Xian Yu?" Wen Yu hurriedly corrected herself when she heard this, and she shouted respectfully and solemnly, "Master." When Mystic Moon heard Wen Yu addressing her as master, she suddenly felt that she had another responsibility apart from being the Moon Empress Moon Envoy. Xian Yu, who had just become Wen Yu's master, did not dote on her too much. Instead, her expression immediately turned serious. "I will be very strict as your master. In the future you must learn everything that I teach you." Wen Yu heard this and nodded her head vigorously. Wen Yu had experienced Mystic Moon's teaching method before. That force-feeding style of education had caused Wen Yu, who had just received Mystic Moon's guidance, to have the intention to give up several times. However, after enduring it, Wen Yu could actually feel her shocking growth in just a month. Although this growth process was arduous, it was very fulfilling. Wen Yu loved this feeling. Wen Yu promised, "No matter how strict Master is, I will be able to endure it. I will also earnestly learn what Master teaches me." Just as Wen Yu's voice fell, she felt a horrifying pressure rising in front of her. The dazzling silver luster was like the reflection of the moon in the water, causing ripples to appear in the space. Wen Yu looked up and saw Mystic Moon, who was wearing a silver robe. Her originally black hair had already turned crystal silver. Mystic Moon's face was also covered in silver dragon patterns, and there were two sharp silver horns on her head. When Wen Yu saw the two horns on Mystic Moon's head, even though she had a calm personality, she almost exclaimed. Wen Yu, who had lived in the Radiant Moon Palace since she was young, did not expect Mystic Moon, or rather her master Mystic Moon, to be a fae. Just by sensing the dense dragon pressure that erupted from Mystic Moon's body, Wen Yu knew that Mystic Moon was a fae with a dragon species bloodline. Wen Yu had seen many dragon species faes before, including Zhou Luo's diamond/fantasy breed lava dragon lizard. However, under the dragon species pressure in front of her, the dragon species pressure that Wen Yu had felt before was not even qualified to be a reptile. Or rather, the two could not be compared at all, as though they were not the same bloodline. As a creation master, Wen Yuming guessed that the dragon species bloodline in her master Mystic Moon was no longer as simple as the main dragon species bloodline. The concentration of this bloodline was definitely above the legendary main dragon species bloodline. What happened next made Wen Yu, who was already very shocked, widen her eyes even more. She did not expect Lady Mystic Moon to become her path protector after becoming her master. However, Wen Yu did not understand why she had heard of swearing with a willpower rune and a law rune. But what was with swearing with a realm? The second was even worse. End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.